You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, I am Maureen Bogey.
And this is Dylan Hackworth.
And believe it or not, you are listening to the, yes, you are hearing me correctly, the Creep Street podcast.
Ooh, good golly, that's right.
Ooh, hurts so good, my girl. Now, let me tell you, okay, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that jazz. We have a Patreon if you are interested in supporting us.
That's right.
What else? Any other updates we have going on?
Well, let me give a little shout out to our Patreon.
Of course.
The Dream, James Watkins.
That's right.
The Finnish Face, Via Alongtvist.
Yes.
And the newcomer, the Madman Marcus Hall.
Oh,
that's right. In fact, check out the Instagram account Middle Class Collector. Marcus is actually, he buys and sells and trades sports cars.
Good friend of the show.
Good friend of the show. Check out his stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah.
But yes, our Patreon, we have a $2 a month, $5 a month, and a $10 a month.
Yeah.
For $2, you get a one-time shout out, plus you get access to the Patreon community.
Yep.
For $5, you get a bonus episode ad-free every month on top of all that. And then at $10, like Marcus, James, and Via,
our connoisseurs.
Our connoisseurs, you get that ad-free bonus episode. You get a shout out every episode. And you get a watch-along movie commentary featuring the two of us. It's like you're sitting on the couch watching a movie with us. And you know what? We just put up our first one last night for our Patreon users. Well, if you are a Patreon subscriber at the $10 level, you can enjoy the movie, the 1996 slashic Scream. Well, why don't we quit yakking and we get to it, huh?
Quit yakking and get tacking.
Today, we are talking about the Curse of King Tut.
The Curse of King Butt?
Otherwise known as the Curse of King Tut's Tomb, the Curse of King Tutankhamun, or the Curse of the Pharaoh.
Yes.
Let me tell you, you're going to want your mummy after this one.
Dylan.
Man. So why don't we just get started?
Yeah, let's just pop off, okay.
As we know from episode 12, royal inbreeding, that King Tut's life was short and not pleasant because of the effects of inbreeding.
Yeah, just a quick, I highly recommend that those who haven't listened to the royal inbreeding episode, listen to it. But if you don't listen to it, the long and short of it is breeding and reproducing with people you're related to is bad and should be avoided. But it wasn't.
Well,
and it's not.
As we know, at the age of 9, he took the throne, and at the age of 9 also was buried. And
to his goddamn sister.
To his goddamn sister.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure his parents were siblings, too.
Oh, that's right, yeah. And of course, he did not live long. He died young, quite young. The irony about King Tut is that in Egyptian history, he was kind of considered a minor pharaoh.
Right.
To a person alive back then, it wasn't like one of the big...
No, and he had a very short reign.
Very short reign, obviously, because of health issues and whatnot. But if you were to ask anyone today to name a pharaoh, almost everyone would probably have heard of the name Tutankhamun.
Right.
King Tut. And while his place in history as a ruler may have been kind of small, the discovery of his tomb was huge.
Yes.
It was huge. One of the biggest breakthroughs in archaeology in human history.
Yeah.
And so that's why we think of Tut as kind of a rock star, because of what his discovery means.
Right.
He's kind of, everyone knows the King Tut.
And also at the time that his tomb was discovered, the civilization was finally at a point where, information was being spread across the world fairly easily, you know, a lot of newspapers, so people everywhere heard about it, and it really it blew up in ways that archaeological dig couldn't be before.
Right. This discovery happened to hit right at a time of big social change, technological change. So it was kind of a perfect storm for sort of Tut fever to sort of take over the planet.
Oh
which you'll see. Tut, he's like a rock star.
I mean, I got Tut fever.
He's like fucking Elvis. He's like the Beatles. When they found Tut, he was the goddamn Rolling Stones, for Christ's sake.
Truly, it really is like that.
Yeah. But let's also stage what was going on in history around this time.
Yeah.
Egypt was actually a coveted destination for the wealthy of Europe and elsewhere. the dry heat was seen as a cure-all for those who could afford to actually get there.
Right.
Often doctors would prescribe it. You know, if you had the money, you got that cough, maybe go spend some time in Cairo, you know?
Exactly. This might sound a little familiar even up into the 70s with Annalise Michel.
Oh, that's right.
She did not go to Egypt, but she was, because of her health issues, she was sent away from the city and kind of for a similar thought, be like, get to the fresh air and all of that stuff. So,
and this happened to be how one George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, otherwise known as Lord Carnarvon, as I will refer to him henceforth, got involved in this story. And he's one of the big figures of this story. So Lord Carnarvon, he lives in the beautiful Highclere Castle. Gorgeous.
Oh, yes.
Gorgeous Highclere Castle. And you know what? In his family, in these documentaries we were watching, his family kind of described him as like an early Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
He was a wealthy man, obviously, but he loved adventure. He loved explore.
Yeah.
In fact, he loved and we're talking early automobiles. He received, I think they said he even got one of the very first speeding tickets in history.
Oh, really?
He was just a bad boy. He loved adventure, Very fun guy.
That's cool.
Loved adventure. Yeah.
Well, that's such a cool part of history at that time that
Exactly.
at least I don't really tend to think of being American, but that there were people in Europe, these nobility going off and going on these really amazing adventures.
Exactly.
It's really wild.
And I'm curious to know what a speeding ticket would be in that age. What was breaking the speed limit? They were going just a vicious 20 miles an hour down that trail. Yeah, Carnarvon, you son of a bitch. But anyway, Carnarvon, being the bad boy rebel that he was, got into an automobile accident.
Oh, no.
And he was fine, but for the rest of his life, he would kind of have certain issues that would flare up. And his doctor said, hey, cold, rainy England.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you should, get out of Dodge. Go down to Egypt.
Get that dry heat.
Get that dry heat, baby. Well, when down there, Lord Carnarvon would meet the other big character in this story, Howard Carter. Howard Carter would go on to be the guy who really gets credited for discovering King Tut's tomb. He was this guy, he had been searching for years, and basically he met Carnarvon when Carnarvon was down there, and Carnarvon was impressed by this guy and decided, you know what, I'm gonna fund your fucking dig, guy. Mr. Carter,
Shark Tank.
Funding this shit.
Okay, yeah.
And then Carnarvon wasn't back in England for 3 weeks until he went back, because he was excited. He was like, God damn, we're gonna find something. Specifically in Egypt, the story happens in the Valley of the Kings.
Okay.
Each pharaoh is buried with an immense amount of jewels and treasure, and because of that, tomb raiding, had been a profession for millennia.
So before Angelina Jolie.
Before Angelina Jolie, before Alicia Vikander. Yes.
God damn it, I nailed that
People
joke.
were raiding tombs.
I nailed it.
So many of the tombs by this time had already been stripped clean, and it was assumed that there were no more surprises to be found in the Valley of the Kings.
Okay.
Well, Carter was incredibly meticulous in his work, though. He would dig up literally everything, yard by yard, day after day, couldn't find anything.
Damn.
In fact, December of 1921, just before Christmas, Lord Carnarvon had sent a summons to Howard Carter to come to his home at Highclere Castle.
Oh, back in England.
Back in England.
Okay.
Because he was planning to tell him, look, I can't afford this.
Right.
It's a goose chase, baby. We're not finding anything.
Exactly. He's like, I'm a rich guy, but even I have my limits.
I'm a rich guy, but I mean, even a rich guy has limits,
I
right?
can't just be tossing money.
You just can't be throwing green
forever.
down there.
Yeah.
So Howard Carter pleads with him. He says, we're almost done. Fund one more season. Carnarvon says, okay, you got it. I'm going to fund one, but only one more season. Because by this time, also gossip had started to happen. People started to talk behind their backs like, oh, old Carnarvon and Carter have gone batty. They think they've lost it. On the third day of the last expedition, workers uncovered a hidden stone stairway that led to a door with an ancient seal on it. It was the seal that indicated royalty was inside.
Damn.
Now, keep in mind, they've been working on this for over 5 years now.
Yeah, can you imagine?
I know, right? And they're getting made, they're pretty much getting ridiculed.
Yeah.
So Carter notifies Carnarvon immediately via telegram back in England of the good news. In fact, Carnarvon was having tea with his daughter at Highclere Castle when he received the telegram, and he took off for Cairo along with his daughter immediately.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is where it starts to get weird. You see, Howard Carter lived alone. So to keep himself company out there in Egypt, he had a bright yellow canary as a pet.
Cute.
And locals who were helping him out with the excavation, everything, they loved this bird because it was so pretty, this bright yellow bird. And they would always say, you know, this canary is going to lead us to the treasure. He's going to lead us to Tut's treasure.
He was their mascot.
Good luck charm. Right, right. Well, as Carter was walking back home from sending that telegram to Carnarvon, one of these locals who was helping build came running up to him. In his hands, he was holding a mound of yellow feathers. He gets to Carnarvon and he says, Lord Carnarvon, I'm so sorry. Somehow a cobra had gotten into the birdcage and eaten the canary.
Oh.
And here's what's wild. The cobra is the symbol of Egyptian royalty. When you look all over these hieroglyphics, they're all, the headpieces, they all have like a cobra.
They do. Okay, so harsh start.
Yes. Well, all the locals took this as an omen, right?
Right.
They're pleading with Howard Carter not to open this tomb.
Yikes.
And to which Carter responds,
"Don't be such a damn fool. Just make sure the cobra is not in the house."
Sir.
Well, on the evening of November 26th, 1922,
okay,
another door was discovered, and this one bore the crest of Tutankhamun. It also showed signs that 2 sets of previous thieves may have been there before, as one of the walls had been broken into. Later, after they had gotten in, and we'll get to the part where they actually look in, but later when they would get in, they would deduce that they think it was 2 separate groups of thieves and that perhaps one of them got caught in the act. But since then, it had probably been about 1,000 years since anyone else.
Wow.
So we're talking, Tut's probably been there 3,000 years. You know, these thieves came in 1,000 years, but we're still like 1,000 years before.
Isn't that insane?
Isn't that wild?
How long ago
that even
is.
those ancient thieves, they thought this was ancient.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. Even to them, yeah, wow.
Isn't that wild?
That is.
So Carter was afraid that whatever was in there may have already been got. You know.
Oh, yeah.
He's a little nervous. So now, standing at the door is Lord Carnarvon, Lord Carnarvon's daughter, Lady Evelyn, I think is what her name was, Howard Carter, and Howard Carter's assistant. They chisel a hole and look through the door. They light a candle because it's very dark. They hand it to Carter. He's peering through, and it's all silent because they're holding their breath. They're like, oh, shit. Hopefully something's in there.
Yeah.
Howard Carter peers into the tomb, and the following quote is his telling of that moment.
As my eyes grew accustomed to the light, details of the room within emerged slowly from the mist. Strange animals, statues, and gold. Everywhere the glint of gold. For the moment, an eternity it must have seemed to the others standing by. I was struck dumb with amazement, and when Lord Carnarvon, unable to stand the suspense any longer, inquired anxiously, "Can you see anything?" It was all I could do to get out the words, "Yes, wonderful things."
Whoa.
Finally, after 5 years, they'd found something marvelous. An extravagant tomb packed to the gills with treasures of all kinds. Gold, jewels, ebony, ivory, you name it, baby. It's all there.
After they've been searching for 5 years and it's fucking hot outside, and everyone's being like, "You're stupid."
Yeah.
And they're like, we're rich, so we're gonna do it, and it worked.
And then all of a sudden, they stumble on fucking Ric Flair's closet right there, baby. Just packed with jewels.
Packed to the ghouls. That means gills.
Now, the story they gave to the Egyptian authorities was that they simply took a look in, patched up the wall, and then came and reported. As part of their deal, Carter and Carnarvon were not allowed to enter the tomb without some sort of an official from the Egyptian Organization of Antiquities. Now, they claimed they just had a peek in, like I said, sealed it up, waited 3 days for their guy from Cairo to arrive, but this is not the case.
Yeah, there's no way.
The truth is, they spent the whole night in there. Lord Carnarvon's daughter was actually the very first to enter. Of course, overnight, the story becomes a global sensation.
Oh my God.
Carter, Carnarvon, and Tut are now rock stars.
Oh my gosh, yes.
These men had been ridiculed for their pursuits, and finally, boom, they had something to show for it.
Hell yeah.
Gossip, like I said, had been circulating that they were going bad shit. So you have to think, Carter and Carnarvon were probably dancing all over that fucking tomb.
Oh my God.
I would.
That must feel
I'd be moonwalking
dope.
across that fucking tomb all night.
baby, yeah.
These men were obviously on cloud 9.
Oh, yeah.
And hey, they needed to make back some of the losses, their financial losses that they occurred while fucking making this happen.
Right.
So the story had become one of the biggest in history. People all around were captivated. Carnarvon, being a savvy businessman, sold exclusive rights to the story to the London Times for a very handsome fee.
Okay.
As we said, Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon are at the top of the world. But 3 weeks later,
Oh, no.
Lord Carnarvon was having a shave with his straight razor when he accidentally cut a little mosquito bite that was on his face.
Oh, no.
Just your typical little nick. Everyone gets it. Every now and then you get a little nick when you're shaving.
Yeah, all the time.
This little cut, however, didn't heal. Carnarvon was struck with a fever a few days later on a trip to Cairo. That little cut had become infected. Lord Carnarvon had blood poisoning.
Got blood poisoning?
At the very moment of Lord Carnarvon's death, all the lights in Cairo went out. Now, at that time in history, all utilities like electricity and stuff was controlled by the British Army. And not only was the British Army clueless as to how the power went out, they couldn't even figure out how to get it back on. Something was weird.
Oh my God.
It wasn't, obviously power goes out, they know how to turn it on.
Right.
But for some reason, they did not know how it went out, and they couldn't figure out how to fucking get it back on.
So the man who bankrolled
The moment he died, boom. Now, this is what they said in the newspapers. I'm sure it's a little exaggerated.
But
I'm sure.
I mean, how strange is
damn.
it that this man who bankrolled this whole mission dies in a very unusual way?
Kind of a mundane way. Not that those things don't happen.
But it's just odd that it happened to him at the time that it, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then also, that even if it wasn't the second that he died that the lights went out, but the fact that they around the same time, still that they all went out in Cairo, that is strange.
And just to preface for everyone, the number of deaths that are considered to be part of the curse or due to the curse, people's opinions on that vary wildly. Some say 13, some say upwards of 25. It all depends on how vague of a connection you want to make. So not saying that those ones that are a stretch aren't true. What I'm doing in this episode, just I'm going to focus on the ones that are like the fucking weirdest.
Oh, yeah,
like the weirdest coincidence. Because there's other ones that's like, yeah, they're connected, but it was like 15 fucking years later.
Right.
So I'm just going to focus on the really fucking weird stuff.
Hell yeah. That's what
just
we're all about.
Just want to put that out there. So yes, couldn't figure out how to get these lights back on.
Right.
20 minutes later, as mysteriously as the power went out, it came back on. 2,000 miles away in England, something else happened at that same moment. You see, the Carnarvons had a little pet terrier named Susie who lived with them at Highclere Castle.
Oh no.
It's said that at the very moment of Lord Carnarvon's death, Susie howled out before dropping dead to the floor.
What?
Howled out loud, fell dead to the floor.
That is so bizarre.
Wild, right?
I wonder how old the dog was.
That's a good question, too.
Yeah.
Like we said, at the end, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it,
baby.
Lord Carnarvon was barely dead before the press had declared him a victim of the Pharaoh's curse.
Oh my God.
This story that was already a global sensation became a fucking phenomenon.
Yeah, because now you add a curse on top of it that seems real.
Now it was even bigger. And a theory that one of the documentaries puts out there that probably made sense. Why these legitimate newspapers were pushing this curse thing is they think maybe some of it had to do jealousy that he sold these exclusive rights to the London Times.
Right.
So all of these other people are like, oh, the Pharaoh's curse got him. Pharaoh's curse.
Right.
So, who knows? That's a legitimate...
It is interesting.
It's an interesting thing. Who knows? But yeah, tales of curses began to splash across the front pages of newspapers everywhere. A few journalists actually got to go inside of the tomb.
Right.
And a few of them reported curses being written on the wall. This is what is said to be written inside the tomb of King Tut.
They who enter this sacred tomb shall swift be visited by the wings of death. I will kill all those who cross this threshold.
And if you think about it, given that Lord Carnarvon's death came from an infected mosquito bite, death kind of did come to him on wings.
Whoa, that is so scary. Fuck, that freaks me out. That really does freak me out. The ancient Egyptians were so advanced.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think we've kind of talked about this before. It's like maybe they had figured out some way to actually, like, access a part of energy or something to actually, like, make a curse happen. You know what I mean? It's like, it just freaks you out.
Egyptology is huge to this day in the occult. Well, one, people just love it. It's still to this day.
It's fascinating.
And it was really the discovery of King Tut that launched it. After this, anything Egyptian was like all the rage in fashion. Like in the 20s, it was fashion. Like it was so people would throw. You can find like old photos from the 1920s of, you know, the rich having these lavish house parties and everyone's decked out. There's like pyramid, you know, like they really go all out. It became it was huge. This is huge, you know. So Howard Carter, needless to say, was really shaken by the death of Lord Carnarvon, as you'd expect.
Right.
On one hand, yes, he was his employer because he was financing all these digs, but they had built up a friendship, as you would expect. Like, look, on one hand, like, he was about to get fired by this man. I mean, and then to make that discovery, you're going to have a connection to that person.
Oh, totally. And they have this shared passion. And
you went from being ridiculed together to being the fucking kings of the galaxy.
Right.
Essentially,
oh, my God.
In like a short amount of time. As Drake would say,
started from the bottom, now we're here.
Oh, thank you for that beautiful quotation.
Now, Carnarvon was also good at keeping the press and public out of their affairs. With the story now being a global sensation, people were flooding into Egypt from all over, creating a huge hindrance for them to do their work and whatnot. And now, while few tourists could actually go inside the tomb, there were now tourists there just en masse, like surround as close as they could get. And then, of course, a select few, typically the wealthy, the influential, actually get to go inside this tomb. But it doesn't work out well.
Oh, okay.
For
Can you
everybody.
go? Okay, go on. Tell me every single deet.
One of the few who were allowed to enter was a railroad tycoon named George J. Gould.
Okay.
Who was guided to the tomb by Howard Carter himself.
Wow.
That night, Gould came down with an intense and mysterious fever and died the following day.
The following day?
Yes.
After an intense fever.
And then the documentary said, and then also a British industrialist who also suffered the same fate, I guess within a short amount of time, also visited, I didn't get a name for that, so my apologies to that British industrialist. But yeah, so now here's another body. So we got Carnarvon, we got Gould, we got this British industrialist.
So we've got 3 people that died. Oh my God, it's happening.
So the outside pressure was starting to get to Howard Carter.
Yeah.
He felt like this discovery was being taken away from them, even though it belongs to the Egyptians.
Right.
It belongs to the Egyptians. This was clearly Egyptian property, and it's their land.
He didn't see it that way.
He didn't see it that way, right?
Yeah.
So one day he just snaps and he locks out everyone from the tomb. He puts these iron gates up. No one could get in, not even Egyptians.
Yeah.
Wouldn't even let the Egyptian authorities in.
Yeah, they didn't love that.
Needless to say, didn't like it, so they kicked Carter out. 1 year later, he would be allowed to return to the site as long as he surrendered any claim to Tut's treasures.
That is so embarrassing. What a child. Like, you literally had to go and time out. And then a year later, they're like, you can come back. Dude, you're acting like a child.
But it's like, you've done the big thing.
Right.
You discovered it, dude.
Right.
Your name's in the name's in the history books. You're gonna get a shitload of money anyway, just from probably doing other things.
Yeah.
Because you're now a fucking celeb.
Yeah, don't be an ass.
Like, you're set, bro. Enjoy what you got.
Just
like,
hang out in Cairo. Hang out. Enjoy the food.
Yeah. It'd be like if you worked your life off to be an astronaut.
Yeah.
And you finally got to the moon.
Yeah.
But then all you can think about is, God, I hate this guy they sent me up with.
Yeah. Or
it's like, really? You're on the fucking moon. You think the majesty of standing on the moon, the majesty of standing in this hidden tomb.
Right.
You think you'd fucking drop some of that petty shit. But who knows? Who knows?
You're not an archeologist. You don't get it.
I'm not an archaeologist. Maybe I just don't get it. If I find a bone, I'm keeping it.
Yeah. Okay. You're like a goddamn dog.
A dog, baby. So 1 year later, I said he would be allowed to return as long as he, declined any claim to the treasure.
Yeah, embarrassing.
He spent the rest of his years working and cataloging all the treasures of Tut's tomb, though none of it, obviously, would be his. And on March 2nd, 1939, at the age of 65, Howard Carter died of natural causes. But before he died, Carter did his best to make peace with Tut. You see, on Tut's body, they talk about how it was like 147 or something, 443 different jewels and amulets were actually in the linen wrappings. course, they use all sorts of resins and stuff. So essentially, thousands of years later, he's kind of like a gingerbread man. I mean, he's like a rock of glue.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
And this not being the most delicate bedside manner,
No.
Howard Carter took a hacksaw and hacked up King Tut's corpse.
Oh God! To get those jewels. Yikes! That's not great.
But it is said that yes, later in life, he actually made a point to reassemble the body and put him back into his tomb as a sort of, I'm sorry, you rest in peace, so I can hopefully rest in peace.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
So who else fell victim to this curse? Because like we said, there's so many people you could say if you wanted to.
Right.
You know,
Let's do the heavy hitters.
We'll do the heavy hitters. So Lady Carnarvon, the wife of Lord Carnarvon,
yeah,
also died from a bug bite, just like her husband.
What?
Then Lord Carnarvon's secretary, Richard Bethel, died in his sleep without warning. Though it is speculated it might have been a smothering, that it might have been foul play.
Oh, okay. Either way,
nothing is for sure. But
either
still,
way,
he still fucking died.
Under mysterious circumstances.
3 months later, Richard Bethel, who we just said died in his sleep, perhaps smothered, his father, Lord Westbury, leapt from a 7th-story window to his death. He left a suicide note that blamed his son's death on the curse of King Tut's tomb. And in a weird, grim twist, the carriage carrying Lord Westbury's body to the cemetery for his funeral accidentally hit and killed an 8-year-old boy.
Oh my God.
And at that same moment when that boy was killed, this one, it might be a stretch, but it's just one of those things. An employee at the British Museum, whose field was Egyptology, just dropped dead.
What the fuck? That is weird.
There was also a gentleman named A.C. Mace, who was a part of the excavation team, I guess died of arsenic poisoning in 1928.
Okay.
So here's this. This is interesting. In the 1970s, after much popular demand, Egypt finally agreed to letting some of King Tut's things tour the globe.
Right.
You know, all the big, we all want to see it.
The Beatles tour.
We want to see it, baby.
Yeah.
We want to see Tut. Give us Tut.
Give us Tut.
Give us the Tut talk.
Give us Tut.
Oh, man, I'm crazy for Tut. It was Tut fever. Everyone finally in the 1970s, the Egyptian government was like, okay, we'll send him around.
We'll send over the Tut.
So,
but weren't they actually like truly very worried about it?
Oh yeah, they should.
Yeah, they actually.
Well, of course, it's these priceless things that mean so much to your nation. I'm sure.
And I think, and also the curse, though, I think was also a concern.
Yes. Well, good thing you mentioned.
Okay.
Because Egypt's director of antiquities had a dream that if he let Tut's things leave Egypt, he would die. 3 months later, he did.
No.
He was killed in an auto accident.
What
the same day when packing up Tut's death mask to be shipped to London, an employee had a little laugh at the expense of Tut's curse, dismissing it as phooey, and he died of a heart attack.
No. Okay, this is weird. Okay, if a few of these things happened, it would be a coincidence.
It's wild.
But all of this happening, and it seems to be happening at similar times.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Now, one of the people waiting in London for when that mask arrived was Lord Carnarvon's daughter, the one who actually entered the tomb.
She was the first one.
Lady. And that's actually something cool. You know, Howard Carter gets the credit for discovering and Carnarvon gets it for financing. But physically, the first one to enter was her, actually.
She's the Neil Armstrong of the crew. So she hadn't seen it since she was,
Right, she had not seen it.
I don't know how old she was, like 20 or something.
And keep in mind, there was like over 5,000 things in this tomb.
Yeah.
Her father barely got to see any of it.
Right. That's right. Because they hadn't even had gotten to like the back part of the tomb or something before he died. So there was so much he hadn't even seen.
Well, naturally, as you expect, you're dealing with very delicate things.
Right.
So I'm sure the process I'm sure it's like watching paint dry, but for good reason. He really didn't get to see much of the treasures.
Right.
Well, Lord Carnarvon's daughter, she was waiting there, and when asked about the curse, she laughed it off, pointing out the fact that she was still alive and she was the first one to actually walk in there.
That's true.
One day when leaving the museum after a visit, because she visited many times because...
Oh, I'm sure.
Most of the stuff she hadn't even seen.
But at the same time, I'm sure that was also very like emotional for her.
I'm sure it was.
And hard.
Well, one day when leaving the museum after one of her visits, she had a massive stroke that left her paralyzed.
Oh my God.
And like you said in that documentary, they go over what could have, was it she's a woman of a certain age. I'm sure there's stress, there's emotions of different kind. Was it just a combination of that? And that's obviously, as you'd expect, a big theme in a lot of this. Because there's certainly some that are like, what the fuck?
Right. But then maybe you think it's like all connected.
Right,
or,
because,
you know what I
and
mean?
that's the one thing. I'm not saying that's wrong.
No, yeah.
I'm just saying that's cool, but there's no way. At least these, you can say, well, fuck, even if it's fake, that's a big fucking coincidence.
Totally.
But even later, that documentary talked about, in 1995, there was a couple from the U.S., they were visiting and went inside King Tut's tomb, and she touched the wall briefly, and this poor woman ended up getting ill and dying. Well, and it should be stated she
had Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Hodgkin's lymphoma. You know, everything was in remission, but it should be stated her immune system was compromised. But that is a big theory. Even today, you know, when they're, and granted, I think this documentary was made in the 90s, early 2000s, and even then, you know, they have on like suits and masks, and because they know it's a two-way street. One, there's bacteria and stuff. Even though Tut's dead, there's all this bacteria that can get you sick, and vice versa. Any oils or moisture from your body can actually make it decompose faster.
Right.
So now, you know, but back then they were literally just fucking rolling up their sleeves with a hat. Like
They were like raw dogging it.
Howard Carter was literally like rolling up his sleeves with a cigar in his mouth, just hacking away.
Yeah.
You know, like it's a fucking tree limb or something. Like, so you can understand they were probably putting themselves in a line of danger they didn't really understand.
Yeah.
I'm sure, you know, obviously in that time they understood viruses and bacteria, but, you know, they probably didn't understand that when you have this room sealed off for thousands of years, this cold, dark, warm, damp room, bacteria, it's like fucking, it's fucking Mardi Gras for them.
Right. Well, that's how the it's not even just the bacteria, it's mold.
Oh, that's what I mean. Sorry.
No,
it's,
bacteria is
mold.
also a part of it. But the way that woman who was on vacation and got to go into King Tut's tomb, and when she touched the wall, it's thought that when she touched the wall, she breathed in some microscopic mold spores.
Right.
And they got in her lungs, and because her immune system was crippled.
Right.
So it kind of depends. Like that's why maybe the King Tut's curse affected some people, but not other people.
Right.
Maybe some people's immune systems could fight off some of these molds and bacterias, and some people couldn't. So that's what makes it kind of hard to follow. But then there's some people that like that doesn't really seem to be a factor, like the dog in England, or the or
the fucking electricity.
Yeah, the electricity, or a lady what's her name?
Lady Carnarvon.
Yeah, how she died of a bug bite too. You know what I mean? Like things like that still are happening that are, or the fucking canary and the cobra.
The cobra, to me, is just like, it's almost cinematic. You know, what was interesting, these documentaries we watched, in both, they featured interviews with Carnarvon's with modern day living relatives who still live at Highclere Castle. They're now like the 7th and 8th Earl of Carnarvon, and as you'd expect, that castle is wonderful.
So beautiful, and they have so many artifacts and cool Egyptian things in there too.
It's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. And well, here was something kind of interesting. They put the end of the documentary, well, many years later, their butler, Robert Taylor, he was like their long-term butler. He revealed to them Lord Carnarvon had smuggled back 17 artifacts from King Tut's tomb, and they have been in that castle ever since. They didn't even know.
That castle, I'm sure, just itself has so much history, and then you add these ancient, like 3,000-year-old artifacts that aren't supposed to be there. And your family is apparently cursed.
Exactly. And like I said, ladies and gentlemen, there are so many other deaths that often get stringed to this. Feel free to look them up. I just chose, like I said, the big ones. The ones that are like, what? But yeah, if you want, go look up. I mean, there's tons of interesting stuff. Obviously, there's tons of books and documentaries. I mean, it's such a cool story, and I'm glad I finally got back to Tut.
Yeah, we need a little Tut in our lives.
All right. Well, citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And this is Creep Street. Remember, if you want to support us, go to patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast.
Citizens of the Milkiest Way.
Good night.
And goodbye.